Ed Kemper, also known as the Co-Ed Killer, is one of the most frightening serial killers of all time. Following his release from Atascadero State Hospital, where he was incarcerated after killing his paternal grandparents, Kemper was placed back in the care of his domineering mother, and the results were fatal. He set out on a murder spree targeting female hitchhikers, and he also killed his own mother and her friend. Yet how did the Atascadero psychiatrists not see this coming? After all, Kemper was clearly a deeply paranoid and dangerous young man. That is exactly what we are going to look at today. My name is Sheesh Merriweather and I'm the founder of Crime Viral Online. Today I'll be doing what I do best, which is talking about serial killers. Our video today is Ed Kemper, inside Atascadero State Hospital. But first, here is a treat for all you true crime fans. Magellan TV is a new type of documentary streaming membership founded by filmmakers. Their team of producers and curators brings together premium content that dives deep into important documentary subjects. Magellan TV has some of the best collections available in true crime, history, science, nature and space. There are so many great choices, it's hard to stop watching once you start. There are over 3,000 documentaries to choose from and new programs are added on a weekly basis. Even better, there's a growing selection of shows available in 4K without additional cost. You can watch Magellan TV on any device or connected TV. You can even cast from your phone to your TV. It's super easy to use. So check it out now. Click the link below to get a 4-month free. I have just finished watching The Last Confessions of the Cannibal, the true story of how one man named Alexander Pierce is awaiting execution, and as he's chained to a wall in his cell, he confesses to the unthinkable, resorting to eating human flesh to protect his own survival. This dramatized version of events is disturbing, grisly, and will have you asking many questions about what lengths you would go to survive. Now let's get you back to the serial killers. At the time of his arrest, Ed Kemper stood 6 foot 9 inches tall and weighed approximately 285 pounds. Born Edmund Emil Kemper in Burbank, California on December 18, 1948, he was the middle child and only son born to Clarnell Kemper, a woman who he despised his entire life. His parents split at a young age, and Kemper said that his mother's hatred towards him was because he looked so much like his father. He said, "My mother was there to beat me and humiliate me. She was there to use me as an example of how inferior men are." By the time he was 8 years old, Kemper was already a foot taller than other children his age, so his mother was worried that he would overpower and molest his sisters. She then made him sleep in a windowless basement every night, yet his sisters were allowed to sleep upstairs with their mother, where they could all be together. This is when his murderous thoughts had begun to blossom.
Well, at a certain time of the evening, the family left the center room, the living room of the house. My mother and my sisters, or my sisters themselves, would go up to bed upstairs, where I used to go to bed, upstairs. I had to go down to the basement. And an 8-year-old child had a tough time differentiating the reason in that. Why am I going to the basement? I'm going to hell, they're going to heaven. Earth is the living room. I'm going down to deal with demons and monsters and ghosts and all the things that scare me. They don't have to.
Aged 9 years old, Kemper had a reoccurring fantasy of sneaking up behind his mother and hitting her over the head with a hammer. Later, as a teenager, he started decapitating cats. He lied to his sisters when they kept asking where their beloved pet cat was. Then one day his mother found the decapitated head of her favourite Siamese cat in the wardrobe at home. That was the final straw. With so much tension at home, Kemper ran away to his father's house, yet he wasn't exactly welcome there either. His father's new wife felt very nervous around the teenager. He creeped her out so badly that she prayed he would just leave. So then his father, with nowhere else to turn, dropped young Ed off at his grandparents' farmhouse in Norfolk, California. His father said he would collect his son once the Christmas holidays were over, but he never came back for him. So now we have arrived in the year 1964. His grandparents' small farm is located in the foothills of the magnificent Sierra mountain range, yet for Kemper, he became extremely bored. In the later interview, Kemper said, "I went to live with Dad, and he sends me up to Grandma. Now she's going to undo all the terrible things that my mother did to me. I'm going to be a showpiece. She's going to show the world that my mother was a lousy parent, and I'm going to be a pawn in this little game." Kemper's seething rage turned him into a walking time bomb, and he eventually blew. Aged 15 years old, he shot and killed both of his grandparents. He then rang his mother and confessed to what he had done. He later told police, "I just wondered how it would feel to shoot Grandma." Kemper was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic. Psychiatrists believe that the killing of his grandparents was actually the symbolic killing of his own parents, that he felt both rejected him his entire life. We do have another video on this channel that details more about this topic, titled "Why Serial Killer Victims Are Symbolic," if you would like to check that out too. So due to this diagnosis, Kemper was placed in Atascadero State Hospital for the criminally insane. Atascadero is an all-male maximum security facility and forensic institution that houses mentally ill convicts who have been committed by California's courts. Kemper said, "At Atascadero, I found myself, a minor, in a psychiatric hospital for hardened criminals. According to the law, I should have been sent to an institution with minimal security. But the judge was so outraged by my crimes that he declared, 'I'm not wanting to send this young man to Disneyland.' That's why I ended up at Atascadero, with people on average 20 years older than me. Believe me, I grew up very quickly." He spent 5 years at Atascadero, and during this time, he managed to convince the chief psychologist that he was a well-adjusted, normal, functioning patient who was no risk to society. So then at the age of 19 years old, Kemper landed a job at the hospital as head of the psychological testing lab. It was his job to file all of the psychological tests on other patients. In the book Mask of Sanity, all about the psychopathic personality, first published in 1941, there is a chapter about spotting superficial charm in psychopaths, and it's still relevant today, more than 17 years later. It reads, "More often than not, a person will seem particularly agreeable and make a distinctly positive impression when one first meets him. Alert and friendly in his attitude, he is easy to talk with and seems to have good many genuine interests. There is nothing at all odd about him, and in every respect, he tends to embody the concept of a well-adjusted, happy person. He looks like the real thing, and very often indications of sound reasoning will emerge, and one is likely to feel soon after meeting him that this is a normal and pleasant person with high abilities." Kemper was able to use that exact psychopathic charm to not only convince the top doctors that he was harmless, but also his job in the testing lab meant that he could manipulate his own test score to appear as a completely sane individual. Kemper said, "I hid it from them. They can't see the things going on in my mind. All I had to do to conceal it from them was just not talk about it." After 5 years at Atascadero, Kemper was allowed to leave the hospital under the condition he would see his parole officer and social worker every other week. The original plan was to release him in stages. First, he would be sent to a halfway house where he could attend supervised social functions with persons of his own age. Yet he only spent 5 months in this program before he was fully released back into society. Kemper said, "When I got out on the streets, it was like being on a strange planet. People my age were not talking the same language. 2 weeks after I was on the streets, I got scared because I hadn't seen anyone. Finally, I called the district parole officer and asked if I was doing something wrong. Was I supposed to go to the parole officer, or was he coming to see me?" Kemper said the man on the phone asked him, "What's the matter? Have you got a problem?" And when Kemper told him, "Well, no," the man replied, "Well, we're awfully busy with people who have. We'll get to you." Conditions of his parole also meant that custody went to his mother, the woman who is his psychosocial stressor. When I am asked if I think that violent offenders should ever be released from prison, really I believe it comes down to finding out what the individual's psychosocial stressors are. and counselling them in how to deal with that stress. Psychosocial stressors are a life situation that creates an unusual or intense level of stress. For example, divorce, the death of a child or parent, prolonged illness, unwanted change of residence, a natural catastrophe, loss of a job, or being placed back in the care of a domineering and controlling mother who has beaten and berated you for your entire life. Kemper later told investigators the killings were impulsive. Following yet another fight with his mother, he would leave the house and kill another innocent victim. Former FBI agent John Douglas himself said if Kemper's mother wasn't there, he would not have turned out to be a serial killer. Kemper later took the bodies of many of his victims home with him, where he decapitated, dismembered, and violated their corpses. After he murdered his mother, he pinned her head against the wall and screamed and threw darts at it. If what you have heard throughout this video terrifies you, this giant natural-born killer, the systematic failures at Atascadero Hospital, and also how true evil can hide in plain sight, then you will also be terrified to know that Kemper will be eligible for parole in July 2024. He will then be aged 75 years old. And as you can see from these pictures, a career in serial killing really ages you like milk. Let us know in the comments what you think about the case of Ed Kemper, or if you have any suggestions for future videos, we would love to hear them. And don't forget to like and subscribe for even more serial killer content.